A lone human traveler, David, had been drifting from planet to planet, scraping by on what little work he could find. His ship, old but reliable, had carried him across the stars in search of purpose. One fateful evening, he landed on a remote trade hub in the neutral sector, a dusty, run-down outpost where merchants, mercenaries, and refugees crossed paths. Hunger gnawed at his stomach as he searched for a meal that wouldn't drain his dwindling credits. He stopped by a vendor roasting skewers of an unidentifiable meat. As he raised his first bite, his eyes landed on two figures lurking in the shadows, watching him intently. Their ragged cloaks barely concealed their alien features, sharp yet delicate, with shimmering greenish-blue skin and large, luminous eyes filled with silent desperation. David hesitated before making a decision that would change everything. He stepped toward them, offering half of his meal without a word. The taller of the two hesitated, then took it carefully, handing the skewer to her sister before accepting one for herself. They ate hungrily, savoring every bite as if it were their first real meal in weeks. "Thank you," the older one finally whispered, her voice like a soft chime in the wind. "You looked like you needed it more than me," David replied. "Name's David." The younger one, barely more than a child, wiped her mouth and spoke. "I'm Lyrian. This is my sister, Tessa." They glanced at each other as if weighing a decision. Finally, Tessa stepped forward. "We need help." David sighed. He had his own problems to worry about, but something in their eyes made him stay. "What kind of help?" Lyrian looked around nervously before leaning in. "We escaped from people who aren't kind. They'll be looking for us." David rubbed his temples. He had no interest in getting tangled in someone else's problems, but leaving them to their fate felt wrong. "All right," he said finally. "You can come with me. Just until we figure something out." They didn't waste a second. Together, they made their way back to his ship, a humble freighter named the Starbound Spirit. Once inside, David programmed a course for a safer system while the sisters huddled in the small mess area, exhaustion and relief evident on their faces. Days passed, and David learned more about them. They were from a species known as the Ralphine, once part of a vast empire but now scattered and hunted after their homeworld fell. The ones chasing them were slavers, brutal and relentless. One night, as David was repairing a malfunction in the engine room, the ship's proximity alarms blared. He rushed to the cockpit to find a massive warship closing in fast. "They found us," Tessa murmured, gripping the console. David's heart pounded. His ship was no match for theirs, and he had no real weapons. His only choice was to run, but even that seemed impossible. "I can help," Lyrian said suddenly. David turned. "What?" She took a deep breath. "We have abilities. Our people were once feared not for our weapons, but for what we could do with our minds." Before he could ask what she meant, the ship shuddered. The enemy was locking onto them. Lyrian and Tessa clasped hands, their eyes glowing brighter than before. A strange hum filled the air, and suddenly, the enemy ship lurched, its systems flickering erratically. The pursuing vessel began spinning out of control, its weapons silenced. David watched in awe as the massive warship was forced to retreat, its systems failing under some unseen force. The moment it vanished into hyperspace, the sisters collapsed in exhaustion. "That was incredible," David breathed. "You never mentioned you could do that." Tessa chuckled weakly. "You never asked." David ran a hand through his hair, glancing at the empty void where their pursuers had been. He had saved them once, but now it was clear, they had saved him, too. He exhaled deeply and looked at them. "You've got nowhere to go, right?" They nodded. "Then I guess you're part of my crew now." Lyrian smiled, and for the first time, David felt like he had more than just a ship, he had a purpose. Together, they disappeared into the stars, three lost souls bound by fate, forging a new future.